Do you want to create a brand name and tagline that have impact, stand out, and are remembered? Today we're going to go through my process of doing just that. So, choosing a name for your organization can be somewhat of a challenge. It's hard to create something that is different from the competition, that stands out and is remembered, and that's available on domains. In this video, I'm going to try to get you past any writer's block that you might be facing by giving you a creative framework that you can follow. Before we get started, I want to let you know that the workbook that we'll be using here is available on my website, free to download. If you go to brycetufts.com under the resources tab, you can download it there. It's an interactive PDF, so you can fill it out as we go through the video, and hopefully by the end, you'll have a name chosen. So it's pretty obvious, but in order to get started here, we're gonna need a brand to come up with a name for. I'm gonna be using a fake organization, a helmet company that I am using in order to walk through this process and hopefully to give you some context about the decisions that we're making. So in this workbook, it's an interactive PDF, so you'll be able to fill out any of these text boxes with the information that you need to fill it with. Obviously, since we're starting this video, I don't yet have a name for this company, so I will be filling in Helmet Company, which is very creative. If we jump forward a few pages here, we'll see the table of contents. You can see all the sections that we're going to work through during this video. Now, the first section is common name types. So I've taken the liberty of organizing name types into 7 different categories just to help us get our minds around what we're trying to do and make sure that it makes sense for our company. So in these 7 categories, we have founder. If you're going the founder route, it's a pretty straightforward process. You're just going to take your name and name the organization after you. The benefits of this is it's very conservative. You'll have legacy, recognition. The brand and who you've named it after are now one, which can also work against you because you're now tied to this brand. The next route you can do is descriptive. So this describes precisely what you do. It communicates what you do very clearly and fast so people understand what your company's about. Unfortunately, you'll probably run into a lot of other companies that have done this. Next up is fabricated names. So a fabricated name is something that's made up, unique. It doesn't really exist prior to you making it up. This is great if you want to stand out and be different than the competition, but unfortunately, you're going to have to educate your audience on what this name should mean to them. And metaphors. So this can be kind of tricky because you're going to name your company based off of some attribute that's similar to it. This is creative and it can set you apart, but it can also be confusing if it's not done right. The next up is acronym. This can be great if you have a long name that you just need to get down for sizing reasons. Unfortunately, there are a lot of companies that use acronyms, and because it doesn't inherently mean anything, it can be hard to remember. Another tactic you can take is creative spelling. So this is where you adjust the word to be spelled differently than it's traditionally spelled. This appeals to younger demographics typically, but it can be seen as lazy. And lastly, we have numeric. This is where you're combining the name with a number in hopes that it's different and creative and it stands out from everybody else. If you're going to go this route, I would recommend keeping it between 3 and 4 numbers. Anything more than that is going to be hard to remember and confusing. Now that we've talked through all the common name types, I'm going to choose fabricated because I feel like a fabricated name really works for the high-end brand that I'm trying to create. I'm trying to create something new that doesn't really exist, and I want to differentiate myself from everybody else in the market by having a name that's unique. Now we'll move on to the word list. So the word list is really just to get your mind working. It can be hard, you can hit creative blocks when you just don't have anywhere to go. So the word list asks 4 pointed questions to help get your gears turning and see if you can think of anything. First off, we ask, what words reflect the nature of this company, organization, program, product, or service? I said classy, luxurious, high-end, engineered, innovative, and clean. Next up, we ask, how do customers and clients feel when engaging in this company, organization, program, product, or service? I want them to feel catered to, served, spoiled, special, important, and adventurous. Next up, what is the purpose of this company? To have safe adventures, to be a class signal, to provide cool features, and to be sleek. And lastly, what impact does this company have? I said safety, class, ranking, comfort, a look, and unique features. Now we can get into the next step, which is combinations. A little tip I have for you is to try to avoid perfection. Normally why people run into creative block is because they've set the bar so high that they couldn't possibly come up with something that's as great as they want it to be. So don't be afraid to come up with some crappy ideas and just kick around some words that might be useful. So I'm coming up with fabricated words, and a little tip that I like to use when coming up with fabricated words is I like to think about how it's going to look when we're designing it. When designing, I like words that are short, that have angles in them, they're gonna be interesting visually. I also look for words that are gonna be symmetrical when visually presented. I want these to sound Greek or godly or just bigger than life, mystical even. So from there, once you've kicked around a few ideas just to get your brain spinning, try to narrow them down to your 5 favorites. So for me, I really liked Forme, Votech, Canem, Venco, and Dandra. And when I tried working with each of those and playing with them in my head and thinking about what I liked the best, I really liked Votech, so I chose that as my final name. Now, when I was going through the process to come up with this name, I wasn't just sitting here. I was Googling luxury logos, I was going to name generator sites, and most importantly, I was looking back at our last slide, looking at the words that I pulled and pulling apart the synonyms that made those words up, trying to find words that are close and make you think of the other words, but aren't that exactly. So I liked Votech because it had the V reminding me of an engine roaring, and then the tech, like, you know, something new with a lot of features. Combine those together, I get a really short word that has interesting angles in it. It kind of mirrors itself with the vowels. It's fast to say, it's just the 2 syllables. It sounds harsh, it sounds intense. I really like that name, and that's why I'm going with it. Lastly, feel free to repeat this process as many times as you need. This might not be a clean process for you. You might want to go back, restart, try again, come back in a week, do whatever you need to do in order to find that final name. So next up in the process, we're going to do what's called the utility check. So this is just making sure that our name isn't trademarked or doesn't exist, or that it's going to be easy for people to find in the future. So it's very important to check the trademark on any name that you're choosing. In order to do this, you can go to trademarkia.com, which I've got pulled up right here, type in your name, search it, and it will tell you the trademark history of that. So it looks like I lucked out here, and this has actually been dead since 1997. So I would be free to use and trademark this name for myself. Next up, you want to see if the name you're choosing has a free domain online. This will make it easier for customers to find you, it'll make it easier for SEO. So I'd recommend going to a site like GoDaddy.com, typing in your name, and it will give you a list of what's available and not available. So it looks like Votech.com is taken, but I can get in contact with a broker to see if whoever owns it is willing to sell. Now, as you can see, if we scroll down, Votech.org is available, Votech.io is available, so I can go a different route and still have it, but .com is really preferred. Now, if that's not working for you and you can't find something with your name, go ahead and get creative. So Votech, we're working with helmets, so I could say Votech helmets. It's not as clean, but it's still okay. So it looks like VotechHelmets.com is available. It's not perfect, it's not just the company name, but that's still pretty clean and I could stomach that. All right, now next up is defining your name variation. So most of the time, your company name isn't your only company name. For legal reasons, sometimes you have to be Votech LLC, PLLC, Industries, etc. You might even have sub-brands or departments that need a name of their own. So if you're working with someone to, say, create a logo, they're going to need to know all the different variations of your name so that they can create those variations and make sure that the logo that they design works for those variations as well as just the main version. So just to get it all straight, I like to work inside of this section and make sure that we've got all of the different name variations recorded here. So the final name that we chose was Votech. I've gone with Votech Industries as my legal name. I'm going to say Votech Research is a sub company that's doing R&D to make sure that our helmets are safe. Then I have another sub brand called Give with Votech. Let's say this is some sort of charity that I'm involved with, but I want to have that name recorded for the future when we're doing logos. So now that we have our name variations written down and recorded so that everybody can see them, we can move into taglines. I actually recommend having a tagline for most organizations because it just reinforces the brand that you're trying to build. A lot of times if you've chosen a name that isn't descriptive, the tagline can help fill in the gap and describe to people what it is your company does if the name doesn't. The tagline is also a cool opportunity to expand upon what your company culture is. So for example, within our common tagline types, we have 4 different directions that we can go to kind of expand upon what our company culture is. This method is useful for engaging with your customers a little bit more than the other tagline options do. Next up is descriptive, and descriptive is going to describe some quality of your company. This one can be pretty nice because it fills people in on what your company does if your logo doesn't communicate that clearly. Next up is motivational. These are good for brands that are trying to inspire you, support a way of life, or try to get you to perform some specific action. And lastly, we have comparative. So comparative elevates the brand to a superior rank and separates your brand from other competitors. This tagline answers the question, why are you different? And next up, we have tagline brainstorming. This is very similar to what we did in the naming section, except now we're just gonna be doing it for taglines. So in the last slide, I chose to go with the motivational route. So the ideas I had were a ride above, for the ride of a lifetime. Adventure has never been this classy. The ride of a lifetime for a lifetime. The name of adventure, a new adventure. Adventure of a lifetime. And out of those ideas, I narrowed them down to the 5 we have here, eventually settling on the ride of a lifetime for a lifetime. So if you're having a hard time choosing between multiple taglines, try thinking of it in context. If you're a service company, try to think of what it's gonna look like on a truck. Test out taglines on people that work for and with you. See if any of the taglines resonate more than others. And with that, we have finished the naming workbook. If this video was helpful to you, please leave a like. If you have any questions about the branding process, please leave that below. Also, as I mentioned earlier, I have free downloadable resources on my website, brycetufts.com. Just go to the resource tab. There's guides, workbooks, worksheets, things to help guide you through your branding process and make sure that you're creating something that's impactful. Now, this was the 3rd video in a series that I'm doing on this channel where I'm growing this helmet company from nothing to something, providing free resources along the way and guiding you through them. So if you'd like to see more of those videos, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.